Welcome to the And She Looked Up Creative Hour podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and I'm an artist and an entrepreneur. And yes, those two things can go together. This podcast is for the artists, the creatives, and the makers who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. As always, I'm your host, Melissa, and this week I am really excited to be welcoming Lily Ernst to the podcast. Welcome, Lily.
Hello, Melissa. So excited to be here.
I am super excited to have you here. And before we dive into the interview, I just want to give the audience a little bit of an intro to who you are. So for those of you who may not know Lily, she is the voice behind the website Little Sweet Baker, and we're going to be talking about that. But part of the reason why she's here today, and I'm super excited about it, is a brand new ebook that she has just published, and it's called Blogging for Passion and Profit. And in it, she shares the stories of 20 bloggers and small business entrepreneurs. All the stories are told in their own voice, and they provide some insight into what made them want to go down this pathway, as well as some of their best business tips. It's a really inspiring book, and one of the really cool things about it is that all the proceeds from the book are going to Food Banks Canada and Feeding America. So not only is it a great book if you're looking for a little bit of inspiration and some business tips, but it is going to support a really worthy cause. So I'm super excited to talk about that. But before we dive into that, we're going to get to know Lily a little bit better. So Lily, one question that I ask everybody who comes on the show is, did you identify as a creative when you were a little kid?
Yeah, no, definitely not. I grew up in a strict Asian family where creativity was not exactly encouraged. The focus was on, studying and getting good grades. You can get that high-paying job. Even when I first started my blog, my mom couldn't understand what I was doing or why I was doing it. I was puzzled on why I was spending so much time photographing and perfecting my recipes just to put it online for free. It's just like, why? Like, you're home, you're on maternity leave, you're getting paid by the government to play with your kids. Like, why are you doing this? She couldn't be more proud of me now, but she even told me she had her doubts at the beginning.
So if you didn't feel like you were creative as a kid, I always find this a fascinating question because I think all kids are innately creative. I just think you have kids, I'm sure as you watch them, you can see the creativity in them. But what sort of things did you do as a kid then if you didn't necessarily feel like you were creative?
Yeah, you know what? I was actually a very shy and quiet kid. I had two older brothers. They were 10 and 12 years older. And no, I was not the accident. My parents just decided to have another child 10 years later. But I was kind of like an only child, right? So, I think I remember spending a lot of time drawing and coloring. Not that I was good at it. I had dreams of becoming a fashion designer. That was the, girly glam in me. And then, playing with my dolls. And I used to love to read. I could sit down and, just in one sitting, finish a whole novel. But when I started university and then, reading became, mandatory, reading textbook, I kind of lost that love of reading, but it's slowly coming back now.
It takes a while. It's funny. I started out to do a minor in English lit, and by the time I was done university, I was like, yeah, I'm done with reading.
I know, when it's forced and when it's kind of like, the textbooks aren't exactly fun. They're a little bit dry, right? So
yeah.
It's kind of like, ugh.
So what were you what took you to university? What did you decide to study?
I went to university for biochemistry. It's based on, my grades in high school. I was good in science and math, typical. So I decided to pursue biochemistry. And my original goals was actually medical research. But after I graduated, I wanted to get into actually pharmaceutical sales. The opportunities I tried, but just weren't there for me. So I ended up in just like chemical sales. And then from there, I ended up in marketing and advertising. And then from there, I became a blogger.
It's so interesting how many bloggers come from a very similar background to you, especially in the baking field. Like I'm thinking like Janice from Kitchen Heals Soul, she has her PhD in chemistry.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and Denise from Sweet Peas and Saffron, she also has a PhD not in chemistry, but in a biomedical field.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly. She
Yeah.
used to work in cancer research. So it's
Wow. Yeah.
fascinating how many people, and a lot of people, I know you started later, but a lot of them seem to have kind of found blogging when they were actually doing their PhDs. It was like a stress reliever for them. So, um,
I mean, to me, it is kind of a natural fit because like baking is a
yeah.
science, right? You're just kind of mixing things together and yeah.
It absolutely is. So it does make a lot of sense. It might not to the average person seem
Hmm.
obvious, but it really is a very good fit. Baking is chemistry.
Hmm.
And that's what you decided to start blogging in. You have a love of baking. Is that something you did a lot of when you were growing up, or is it something you like a comfort baker?
Yeah, you know what I did? I still remember. I can't remember what grade I was in, but I had bought a cookie recipe book from the school book fair back in the days when they used to have school book fairs, and it
Yes.
was actually a gift for my mom and also a hint. But she never even opened it. So I kind of took it upon myself that if I wanted homemade cookies, I had to do it myself, and I did. And I absolutely loved it because it's just nothing's more rewarding than yeah, taking a bite out of whatever it is that you made, and it's amazing. And then it's even more satisfying sharing it with the people around you, and it makes them happy. Like it just feels really good.
Yes, I think that's why so many people who cook or bake do it. It's because
Hmm.
we want to share. We want to share with people. We want to feed people.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's literally like from the heart. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So you went through university, you wound up working in the chemical field, and then you went on mat leave like so many women do.
Mhm.
And that's when you found something that piqued your interest
Mhm.
while you're sitting there on your mat leave. What made you think, I'm going to start a blog?
Yeah, you know what? It was interesting because there's nothing, it was something I've never thought I would be doing, but I believe everything in life happens for a reason. When I was on my second maternity leave, it was a dark time for me. You're going through hormones. I was home with a colicky baby and a toddler that was acting out for the first time because you have to share mommy and daddy's attention. And I still remember one night with my newborn beside me as he was just, crying it out. I just laid him beside me and I was kind of surfing on my iPad and I just kind of stumbled upon a couple of blogs and I just absolutely fell in love with them. Just, the way the photographs, the way the recipes were written. To me, a recipe blog is like a cookbook brought to life. And it was actually Sally's baking addiction. She has a post, on how to start a blog. And when I read it, I thought to myself, wow, this seems easy enough. I like to bake, so maybe I'll start a blog. And I did, and the rest is history.
Did you go back to work after your second mat leave? And like, was the blog still kind of a hobby, or was it on your mat leave that you said, you know what, I think maybe I could do something with this, and you decided not to go back to work?
No, it was purely a hobby. So when I first started, there was no rhyme or reason. And it was just, whenever I happened to have time or whenever I happened to bake something good, I would photograph it and share it. And then, yes, I did go back to work. But shortly after I went back to work, my company downsized. And because I hadn't been back for long, I was unfortunately one of the ones chosen to be let go. And it was really hard on me, but it was the best thing that could have happened because yeah, having the company let me go, I was offered a package, so that gave me time to be with my family and my kids while they were still small, and also pursue this hobby on the side and to see how things go. So yeah, blessing in disguise.
It's funny how that works.
Mhm.
I think that's happened to a few of us where it's been like one door is closed and it opened the door that we were meant to go through. Did you start to think that this blog could become a job Was that like, did you make a conscious decision when you got let go that, you know what, I'm going to do everything I can to make this my full-time gig? Or were you still thinking you might go back to work in an office or something like that?
Yeah, at that time, the conversation with my husband was, you know what, we'll, stay at home until, my youngest started kindergarten, and I'll continue to work on the blog on the side, right? So no pressure. And then once he, starts just, to go to school, then I can go back to work, if needed. But with a little bit of luck and some hard work, that was never even a question before he started kindergarten. By then, I was already making more than I was.
Mm.
So I was very blessed for that.
Once you decided to go full time, like that's a big step for a lot of bloggers. I think we all kind of, when we get to that point, it's pretty exciting for us, especially, I mean, I don't know what the main business model of your blog is. I always tend to assume that for most food bloggers, it's ad revenue. And it's always fascinating to me that, that this is a way we can make I've been blogging since 2003, so I'm a dinosaur in the blogging world. But it still fascinates me that we get to do this. And to me, it is like the magazine industry of the 21st century. I think what we do has turned very much into like a publishing industry. Like, we're publishers, and we have our own platforms, and we get to make all the editorial decisions and all the design decisions and the business decisions. And it's such an interesting way to earn a living.
So incredible that I get to sit at home and just share my passion with the world and get paid for it.
Yes.
So and I get, the freedom and the flexibility to be there for my kids, or to take summer vacation off. I don't have to report to anybody, or if my kids get sick, I don't have, to call my boss or cancel my appointments. I remember that guilty feeling back in the days when I was in sales. If my child was sick, it's kind of like, oh crap, I call my boss and cancel all my appointments. You have that guilty feeling, right? And now it's just, I just adjust my schedule. It's wonderful. And that's part of the reason why, I put together this book, is I want to encourage other people to have the same.
Absolutely. I think this is why small business and entrepreneurship and blogging, I think that's why they appeal to so many women, because it really does give us the freedom to be flexible for our families, for ourselves, for the things that we want to do. And I think it's really cool. And that's why I'm so excited about the book that you put together.
And I talk about, work-life balance in my chapter. And that was one of the most challenging things after I had my first, and I went back to work, was just finding that work-life balance, because there was none. I'd wake up early, get them ready for daycare, do all my sales call, come home, pick them up, make dinner, put them to bed, and then it's more work, right? Getting ready for my appointments the next day. It was just nonstop. And I felt like I wasn't giving 100% to either. So there was, a lot of mom guilt and, work guilt there. And I think that's the wonderful thing about being a blogger, or, being an entrepreneur and being your own boss, is that you have that flexibility. You can make those choices, right? And divide your time accordingly.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that goes, I'm not a mom. So in some ways, I fight the same battle, but it's a different battle, because I can find myself getting completely absorbed by work and forget to have a life. It's like, oh, it's 10 p.m. and I haven't left my office today. And that's not healthy either. So I think it's really interesting, because there's so many articles out there and discussion about why we don't see more women at the C-level in corporate offices, and why there aren't more women in tech, and why you don't see women at the head of Fortune 500 businesses. And I think we absolutely do need all of those things, but I also think I think there are a lot of women who make a very conscious decision not to do those things, because we're quite okay with being small in order for us to have all the things that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's...
No, because I mean, I remember, in my early 20s, just kind of, imagining myself in the parachute and climbing the corporate ladders. I wanted to be that, head of the, company, CEO, right? But it all changes when you have kids and when you start a family. You realize, there's a bit of a struggle and a balance there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Once you got to the point where it was full time, like what kind of changes? I know for a lot of bloggers, when they go full time, it creates a lot of change within their family. And was that something that you found for you in terms of just the structure of how you guys worked and who did what, or did you do you have help? Do you get anybody to help you? That's a question that gets asked a lot.
You know what? I do. As soon as I was generating enough income, I hired a virtual assistant, a VA, to help out with all the social media posting. I've always had Allison, who was my proofreader and copy editor for the book. And I hired technical support because I don't think you could do it all. And I wanted to spend my time doing what I love, and that was, creating the recipes and doing the photography, and then also having time left for my family too. So I think it's important that, when you can, to get that extra help, have your team, have that support system.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. I think a lot of us who own businesses, we tend to be perfectionists. Like, let's be honest.
We try to do it all, right? But it's not healthy.
No, it's not. And we tend to be maybe I'm just speaking for myself, a bit of a control freak, but I think it's so important to realize that actually hiring help can make your business healthier and it gives you the opportunity to focus on the things that you're really good at. And it's also a really good way to help you drive your business forward.
Exactly. Yeah. As soon as I hired my VA to manage all my social media, I was able to focus more on generating the content, and that's what makes me money.
Yeah.
Right. Fine. Yeah.
That's right. And if you're the person who makes the money, you should be doing the things that make the money.
Yeah, give you the greatest return. Yep.
So you've been doing this for a little while now, and you've reached a level of success that I think you're happy with. Or do you have bigger plans for what you want to do with the site going forward?
You know what? I am pretty comfortable where I am. I'm pretty proud for where I am. I do have ideas for, new projects coming up. One of them being, the book, and that's now completed. But I'm already starting to think of, new projects and ideas for my business. So, yeah. So the blog, I'm happy with the blog. Now it's time to kind of move on to other things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I won't pry too much into what those are, but
yeah, that's just me. But I know those bloggers that their goal was to hit the million and the multi-million and just kind of world domination. But everyone's different.
Absolutely, I'm a big fan of revenue diversification, so I like to have eggs in many baskets as opposed to one.
And I've seen that, and I love what you're doing. You're taking sort of like all your passions and making it your business, that's great.
I think that's something that comes with age. Like I definitely, I'm well into my 40s now, and I definitely, when I was in my 20s, I find this so remarkable seeing some of the younger people in the blogging sphere or the digital content creation sphere, and they're so together, and I was not together in my 20s. And I just look at what they're achieving, and there's some really sharp young women out there who may very well dominate the world in a decade or so. So I think, but I think that's something that comes as you get older. It certainly wasn't something that was there when I was in my 20s and 30s, but as you get older, you just get more comfortable in your own skin, and you become very clear on what matters and what doesn't. And you just, you're not as tolerant of doing things that don't matter to you anymore. So that's one of the nice things about being in your 40s.
Yeah, I'm seeing too, 'cause, yeah, I'm in my 40s as well, and yeah, as you get older, you get more confident in yourself and more comfortable in your own skin, and you don't care about what other people think as much.
Exactly.
Right? I'm going to do this for me.
It's very freeing, and
it is.
Yeah, I've enjoyed my 40s very much.
Yeah, definitely this whole new level of confidence, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I was just talking with friends about that last night, about how I don't know, we got into a conversation about high school, and I was just saying how I had no confidence in high school, whatever. Like I was such a different person. It's funny.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the book, because this was a passion project for you, I think. What triggered the idea?
Well, I knew there was a need. I wanted to share my story because I would so often get asked by friends and family or even acquaintances, how do you make money blogging? How do you start a blog, right? And I also knew that I wanted to give back because I feel very blessed to be where I am. And especially, now with everything that's going on in the world, it's so important to give back to your community and especially the food banks because food insecurities has increased significantly. And even to be able to help people out with their careers, because I know there's so many people struggling right now with the pandemic, right? Losing their jobs or just, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just really important for me to kind of share my story and also to give back.
And I think it's a wonderful way to give back, actually. I think it's such a helpful, and it's an inspiring book. I full disclosure here, Lily very graciously asked me to participate in this project, and I was very thrilled to do so. And interestingly enough, two of my regular guest hosts are also featured in the book, Angelina Brogan and Heather Travis. And we didn't know until we saw the proof copy that the three of us were all in the book. So we got
that's awesome.
We got a bit of a chuckle out of that. But there's some wonderful stories. You included 20 not everyone is a blogger. There are some entrepreneurs in there as well. Most of them are women, though, and it's such an interesting collection of different backgrounds and different paths to becoming a success that I am sure anybody who picks a copy of this up, not only do your dollars go to a very good cause, but I really feel like there will be at least one story in there that really clicks with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
And that was my goal. And that's why I was, looking for contributors from, all sorts of backgrounds in different industry, both male and female, because what I want is, the reader to be able to relate to one or a couple of the stories and really see themselves in that person's shoes and really think to themselves, you know what, they did it, I can do it too.
Yes. I do think that I don't know that entrepreneurship is for everybody, but I think there are a lot of hidden entrepreneurs out there who are just waiting for the right moment or the right bit of advice or encouragement. And I think this book could go a long way to somebody who's maybe thinking that, could this be for me? Yeah. Maybe it could.
And if you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about starting a blog or, starting a business or, a hobby, passion project, the time is now, because I think what's going on in the world, a lot of people are working from home, having this new spare time that they didn't have before. Just go for it. Just do it. I mean, just, taking that first step, that's half the battle.
Yeah. And I think as a lot of us are working more and more from home right now, I think a lot of people are realizing that working from home is very doable. Regardless of what you do, whether you want to be a blogger or not. But it's a very interesting time in the world at the moment, for sure. So once you got the idea for the book, I mean, this is a big project for you to pull together. I know you've been working on this for months, really.
Yeah.
And when you first got the idea, did you have a sense of who you wanted to reach out to? Was there anybody in the book that was kind of like and you don't have to say who if there was, but was there anybody that was kind of like a dream include that you weren't sure if they would be up for it?
To be honest, I was just thrilled and honored to have everybody who, participated in the book, right? Because I knew I was asking people for their time, and I respect that everybody's busy.
Yes.
So I reached out to people. I was just thrilled every time I got interest. When I was deciding who to ask, I picked, fellow bloggers and entrepreneurs that, I've known or I know to be successful. And I just sent them an email, my pitch. I gave them kind of, what the book was about and what the goal is. And I was just so happy to get the interest that I did. Even from you, I was so honored when you said yes. I was like, wow, Melissa from FBC wants to be part of this, wants to share her story. It was great. If I had to pick someone that maybe surprised me the most, I would probably say maybe Jeff Hawley from hashtag Jeff and Matt Mullen from Email and Autopilot. I was surprised in how quickly they responded.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was really happy with that.
Yeah. Jeff is great. I don't know Matt. I've spoken with Jeff on several occasions, and I've taken his program, and he's fantastic. If he's not a blogger, he is an SEO expert. But for those of you who are thinking about blogging, he is definitely somebody that you need to know about. He's helped an awful lot of bloggers take their income potential to the next level. So it was really great to see him in there.
His story, you can just feel the passion come through. Just how passionate he is about SEO and helping people with their business and bloggers. He's a great guy.
He is, and he's really good at taking SEO, which is a very complex topic for a lot of us, and making it something that is very doable, which is something I really appreciate from him. So yeah, that was really cool that he was involved in the book. So when you got started, where did you start? Because this is a big project to pull together. So where did you start? Did you start with figuring out who was going to be in the book, or did you start with knowing where did you start?
You know what? I really didn't know where to start because new to me. So I just kind of sat down and thought to myself, okay, I know what my purpose is, and that is to, put together a book of inspirational stories and advice, to help anyone who is thinking of blogging or starting off or starting a business to kind of achieve their success. And I knew I wanted to give back. And so then I just started to, reach out to people that I admire, and asked if they wanted to be a part of the project. And then it just kind of came together from there. Once I had enough interest, I put together the parameters, and then it became sort of a management position of just kind of making sure people, gave me their stories and putting it all together and overseeing the project, and having, my friend Allison proofread, and then hiring Maria from Plastic Design, put together the book and coming up with the design with her. So I kind of just figured it out as I went along, to be honest.
You know what? That's how most of us do things the first time. I think, though, it's interesting because I think doing a project like this is something that a lot of people find very intimidating. And I think that's because they don't necessarily know that you can get help to do all the pieces. You don't need to know how to be an ebook designer. You don't need to know how to be a copy editor or a book editor. There are people out there who can help you. And you mentioned that Allison, you've worked with for a long time. She did the editing on the book. But then you also mentioned that you had Maria, your designer. And so how did you find a designer? Because that's always something that I get asked a lot.
I actually found Maria through a local mompreneur Facebook group. So I just put it out there that I was looking for a graphic designer to help me with this project. And I got a few responses, and then when I gave them more detail, she gave me the best sort of proposal and quote, and I went with her, and I'm so happy I did. I'm so pleased with the work she did on this book.
It looks great. It looks great. I design ebooks as well, and I think it's a really beautiful book. Now you're in the stage where you're kind of doing the marketing, and I'm assuming this is a bit of a new thing for you too, marketing an actual product.
Marketing. I've never done this before because I'm so used to kind of, selling people, a product or service in the past. So again, I'm learning, as I go along. But I'm just kind of asking all the contributors to share their stories with their audience, doing podcasts, and I'll be reaching out to, fellow bloggers to, share it as well, because it is all going to a good cause.
Yes.
So I'm going to continue working on this so that, I can get enough money to make a good donation to the food banks that really need it right now.
Yeah, especially this time of year. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, I know because we just had our Canadian Thanksgiving and they didn't meet their quota. That's really sad. So hopefully we can get enough to, so that everyone has something for the holidays.
Yeah, that would be a wonderful goal to have to reach, for sure. Absolutely. So in terms of the project as a whole, one of the things you asked everybody to contribute was 2 pieces of advice when it comes to running a business. And this was my favorite part to read from each contributor. And I was just wondering, was there anything in there that kind of you hadn't maybe thought of for your own business? Did you get any great advice while you were putting the book together?
You know what? I mean, all the stories were so incredible, and everyone had, great
Yes.
advice, real, genuine advice. But Rachel Beach from Creating Some Creativity, one of her pieces of advice, which surprised me, I didn't think of, was to pay off your debts and then start your business, right? And I thought that just makes sense. That's great, right? But yeah, I kind of didn't think about that. But yeah, you pay off your debt that way you're starting off the clean slate, and that way there's less pressure, and then you can just focus on building the business. So I thought great piece of advice, right?
Yes, that was a huge one. When I read her story, I was like, oh, that should have been my advice, because that was one of the first things I did.
Yeah, I've never thought about that, but yeah, it just makes sense. So yeah, I really appreciate that from her.
Yeah, that's a great tip. But there was lots of really great advice from especially people who are moms who are juggling all the things just like you are. There was some really great advice from them. And I've been in business for myself for over a decade, and there was still stuff in here that really not even necessarily stuff that I didn't know, but stuff that I needed a refresher on. It's like, yeah, I needed to hear that again. So,
and another example, Julie Cole of Mabel's Labels, one of her advice was, to have your exit strategy.
Yes.
Right? When you're building your business, once you reach your goal, then what?
Yes.
To have an exit strategy. And I thought that's brilliant too. There's just so many great stories and great advice. In the 20 chapters. And, as I was putting it together, it was just so heartwarming to read the stories, because people were just, really kind of opening themselves up and sharing their journey and their experience, how they got started, what they learned, their failures and what they learned from it, and then how they reached their success. It was really an honor and heartwarming to read everybody's stories.
Yeah, it's got a lot of great information packed in here. I really enjoyed the Mabel's Label story. I actually didn't know she was Canadian. That was really cool to me to learn. But I didn't even know that there was one person behind that. Like, I didn't realize it started out the way that it did. So it was really interesting to read her story as well. Yeah.
I mean, like a mom of 6
yes.
started her business from, her basement, and then building it into a multi-million-dollar company. Like, it's a dream. So down to earth and always willing to help. She's fantastic.
Yeah. It was a great story. Lots of great stories in this book, you guys. And it's not just women. There are some really great stories from some really terrific gentlemen out there who are doing some really cool stuff as well.
Brian Johnson from Crazy Dad Speaks runs multiple blogs.
Yes.
Wife also has a business consulting business as well. Jeff Hawley from #Jeff, and then Matt Mullen from Email and Autopilot, and also Raymond, who is a travel foodie, who his career is, in normal times traveling the world and eating the best food. Like, how great is that?
Yes, him and Angelina does the same thing, and obviously she's grounded right now too. But yes, and it's just interesting to see. There's so many different paths. Like, that's the interesting part about this. There's so many different paths, and if you're thinking about starting a business, or if you've already started your business and you're just not sure of the direction that you're going in, I think it's really helpful to read all these stories from other entrepreneurs and just realize that there is no one right way to do this.
Yeah. If you're kind of in the middle of your business, just kind of wondering what the next step is, this book is great because it will offer you some guidance and motivation. Going, because I know, and I was just talking to someone who, started a blog and was kind of feeling a little bit lost and discouraged because she was seeing other people who started at the same time as her kind of really succeed. And I told her, don't give up. You're passionate about, your topic. Keep going, but do your research. I was offering her some advice. Yeah. And I think, and I gave her a copy of this book as well, just to kind of give her some encouragement and motivation and some inspiration.
Oh, that's really nice. So
Hmm.
for you in your business, what do you think has been one of your biggest, I'm throwing this question at you out of the air. What do you
Yeah,
think is
no.
one of your biggest lessons that you've learned?
Let's see, biggest lesson I've learned. Well, I share this a lot with people. So again, when I first started blogging, I was just kind of, there's no rhyme or reason. I was just kind of, posting and sharing whatever I happened to make. But when my first recipe took off, and that was the chocolate chip muffins recipe, bakery style chocolate chip muffins, it made me realize that, huh, people are looking for everyday classics, the tried and true recipes, right? So the main thing that I learned and what really helped me with my success is that create content that people are actually looking for. I know it sounds so simple, but you'll be surprised on, what I see out there. People just kind of creating, you know, um, unique, different recipes, which is great. But, you got to think to yourself. And again, I use this example. I could create the best rose water lychee cupcake. It could be the best cupcake in the world, but nobody wakes up in the morning thinking to himself, I feel like a rose water lychee cupcake today. Let's Google this, look for a recipe, right? Like, so therefore, it's not going to drive traffic to my site. Therefore, I'm not going to make any money. You have to look at it from a business perspective, not from a personal perspective.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference between a hobby and a business is,
Mhm,
when it's your hobby, you can do whatever you like, right?
mhm,
You're not trying to please anyone. It doesn't matter if you make money from it. But once you turn it into a business, there
mhm.
is a responsibility, I guess, in a way that comes with that, where you have to give the people what they're looking for, or because nobody's obligated to just buy something from you or to just read your blog because it's there, right? There has to be something in it for them. So I think
Yeah, to
that's
solve a problem, you have to answer a question.
yes, exactly. Exactly. Oh, Heather would be proud of you right now.
Aw.
And I think before we wrap up, maybe one of the questions that I think is always fun is there a big mistake that you made because I think we've all had those big mistakes where we've gone, oh man,
Yeah.
but it also turns out to be a really big learning um,
Mhm.
opportunity for us. I don't necessarily believe in
Yeah.
mistakes. I think mistakes are just
No,
a way to learn.
if I could do it again, I think one of the things I would have done is maybe paid attention to the SEO more from the beginning.
Mm.
Because yeah, creating my titles and accordingly and sizing my images accordingly. If I had kind of done that from the beginning, it would have saved me a lot of work from having to go back and resize all my images and thinking, oh, I should have made this post title shorter, the URL simpler. So yeah, start off about like right technically.
Yes. Yeah. I think when I started, SEO wasn't even a thing. So it was just.
Oh, yeah, coulda, woulda, right? I'm like, oh, why was that recipe so like? Why did I name it so long? So the URL was like forever. Yeah, yeah. Why didn't I, yeah, title it better? But then once your URL is live, that's its roots, right? You can't change it.
Nope,
So,
that's it. You're tied into it. So before we wrap up, I think the one question I wanted to ask you is like this project that you've done, it's done, it's out there, it's in the world. What for you has been the biggest takeaway from doing something like this? It could be a professional takeaway, it could be a personal takeaway, but what for you has just been the thing that has made you most glad or happy that you went ahead and did this?
well, I learned a lot going through the process. I learned that it's a lot of work to put together a book. So kudos to all the published writers out there. Um, and I just feel humbled that there's just so many, kind and wonderful people that contribute to this book. Like I feel really grateful to people like you and everyone who contributed their story, took their time to kind of share their stories and put it towards a good cause. So yeah, I just feel really honored and humbled and grateful to everyone who contributed. We all came from different backgrounds to share our stories for a good cause. So that just makes me feel good. And right now, again, with what's going on in the world, we need all those good,
We need the good feel stories. Absolutely.
true. So yeah, no, I'm really, really proud and really happy with the results. To be honest, there were moments when I was, going through and I was like, oh, why did I do this? Because it was so much work, right? But now I'm so glad I did.
Oh, it's a great book and you should be proud. And I do know this really was a passion project for you. And I do know what it's like to try and rein in 20 contributors and keep everybody on track and
staying on top of everybody and
it's
following up without being too pushy, right?
exactly being very Canadian and very polite. But no, you've done a great job and you should be proud of it. And for everybody out there who's wondering where they can get a copy of the book, where can they find it?
They can go to my website, littlesweetbaker.com. There's a tab that says ebook, and they can just go there and click on the buy now button and download a copy.
Yes, and we will also put a link to where you can buy the book in the show notes, as well as to Lily's homepage on Little Sweet Baker. And where can they find you online outside of your website?
They can find me on Instagram, Little Sweet Baker. That's my tag for most of my social media, on Pinterest, on Facebook. So just search Little Sweet Baker and you'll find me.
And we will link to all of that in the show notes if you are looking for it. But yeah, it's a wonderful book. And if you are, as I said, thinking about starting a business, or you already have a business and you're just looking for that little bit of push or inspiration or just something to give you that little boost that you might be needing right now, it will do that for you. And the money for the cost of the book is going to a very good cause, so you can feel really good about that as well. Yeah, Lily, thank you so much for being on the show this week. I really appreciate you being here. It was fun to get to chat to you. We've never had the opportunity to talk before.
Mm-hmm. So I want to say a big thank you to you, Melissa, for starting and putting together Food Bloggers of Canada. Because if it wasn't for, you and Ethan, us Canadian bloggers wouldn't have the community that we do, and we wouldn't have the voice that we do, and we wouldn't have the opportunities that we do. So thank you so much to you for, building that community for us.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice to hear. We've been doing it for a long time, and sometimes when you've been at something for a really long time, you kind of forget. You forget the why sometimes, and it's just.
I want to know how much we all appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you telling me that. That's really nice of you. So, yeah. On that note, thank you so much for joining us, Lily, and thank you to all of you who are listening. I will be back next week with another new episode of the podcast. I don't know what it's going to be about yet. So usually I'm a little further ahead, but I'm not this time around. So it's going to be a surprise for all of you, just like it is for me. Thanks very much, Lily.
Pleasure. Thanks for listening.
And we will see all of you next week. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian